The sun poured its warm golden light over the small village of Umudike, making the red earth shimmer faintly as children ran past with laughter that seemed to dance on the wind. Ease, a young man with quiet eyes and a calm presence, walked slowly along the path that led to his mother's house. The air smelled faintly of roasted yam and fresh river water, and even in the simplicity of his village, there was a rhythm that pulsed through everything, steady and unyielding. E's heart, however, was not steady today. Anger had touched him, and he could feel it simmering like embers beneath his skin. Earlier that morning, he had learned that his older brother, Chijibem, had accused him of a betrayal that he had not committed. A misunderstanding over a small piece of land, but in their village, land was more than earth, it was memory, identity, and honor. Chijibem's voice had been sharp, heavy with disappointment and the weight of years, and the other villagers had gathered around, murmuring and watching, waiting for E's reaction. The heat of the sun had felt like a drumbeat on his back, pressing him to answer with the same anger that burned inside him. But as he walked now, he remembered his late father's words whispered by the fireside many years ago, words that E's had tucked away for moments just like this. His father had said that anger was a storm that could destroy everything in its path, and peace was the river that could carry even the heaviest burdens without breaking. E's fingers brushed against the rough bark of the Iroko tree he passed, and he could feel the pulse of life, patient and enduring, beneath his skin. It was almost as if the village itself was reminding him to breathe, to step back, to choose. By the river, he saw Adiz, the girl who had grown up beside him since they were children, washing clothes. Her laughter carried over the water, and for a brief moment, the weight on his chest seemed lighter. She noticed him and waved, a simple gesture that reminded him of innocence, of the days before anger had found him. He walked closer, letting the cool breeze from the river settle on his face, and for a second, he thought about letting the anger win. But then he remembered the fear in his mother's eyes whenever the brothers fought, the sorrow that deepened the lines on her face, and he stopped. He looked at his own reflection in the river, the man who had the choice to continue the cycle of anger or break it once and for all. His fists unclenched. The river did not rush to judgment, it flowed. When he reached his mother's house, he found Chijibem sitting outside, head bowed, eyes avoiding his. Ease did not shout, did not demand apologies. He simply sat beside his brother, letting the silence stretch, letting it settle between them like the evening dew. Chijibem finally spoke, his voice low, almost fragile. He admitted he had been wrong, that pride and fear had twisted his words and actions. Ease listened, nodding slowly, understanding that in that moment, choosing peace was not weakness, but a strength that could rebuild everything that anger had threatened to destroy. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, the brothers rose together, walking side by side back to the village. The villagers watched quietly, sensing the shift in the air, the weight of anger lifted and replaced by something lighter, something that felt like hope. Ease felt the river of peace inside him grow stronger, and for the first time that day, he smiled fully, letting it reach every corner of his being. That night, as stars began to dot the sky, he sat outside his house, listening to the distant hum of cicadas and the soft murmur of the river. Choosing peace had changed everything. It had not only kept his family whole, but it had taught him a lesson that would remain with him forever. Anger would come again, that he knew, but he had learned that he could meet it with calm, that the storm could be weathered if he let it pass without destroying what he loved most. Ease closed his eyes, feeling the cool night wrap around him like a blanket. And somewhere deep in the village, life moved quietly forward, unbroken, because one man had chosen peace when anger had knocked at the door. The morning arrived with a soft haze over Umudike, and Ease woke to the sound of roosters crowing, carrying a calm that seemed to have followed him through the night. His mother had already risen, preparing yam porridge and gently humming a tune that had been passed down through generations. Ease watched her for a moment, noticing the care in the way she stirred the pot, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her even after all the hardships life had thrown at her family. He felt a swell of gratitude for the simple steadiness of her presence. After breakfast, Ease decided to visit the market. Not for anything in particular, But because the village streets themselves seemed to carry stories he needed to witness, stories that could remind him why peace mattered as much as it did. The market was alive in its own rhythm, with merchants calling out their goods, children chasing each other through the narrow lanes, and the smell of spices and roasted corn mingling with the sun-baked earth. E's footsteps were careful. He did not want to disturb the harmony he had felt the day before. At the edge of the market, he noticed an old man struggling to carry a heavy basket of palm nuts. The man's hands shook under the weight, and his breath came short and sharp. Ease did not pause. He stepped forward and offered his help without a word. Together, they carried the basket to the man's stall, and when it was set down, the old man smiled, a deep, knowing smile that reached his eyes. He spoke softly, blessing Ease in a way that made the young man feel as though he had passed some invisible test. As Ease moved deeper into the market, he noticed a group of children gathered around a small fire where a woman was cooking a kara. The smell of fried bean cakes made his stomach rumble, but more than that, he watched as the children argued over sharing the food. Some were greedy, some were hesitant, and the little fire crackled under the weight of their impatience. Ease stepped in, gently suggesting a way for everyone to take a piece without fighting, and the children looked at him with surprise, as if the idea of listening to reason was foreign yet comforting. While walking past the stalls, Ease saw Chijibem again, this time helping a woman who had dropped her basket of vegetables. Their eyes met briefly, and a small nod passed between them. No words were needed. The tension of the previous day had melted into understanding. Ease felt that same warmth that had carried him through the choice to remain calm, a confirmation that peace was not only for moments of silence but also for moments of action, for deeds that healed as much as words ever could. Later, he wandered toward the river, where the women of the village often gathered to wash clothes and share news. Adiz was there again, her laughter carrying over the water in waves that seemed to pull at Ease's heart. He watched her for a while, noticing the way she moved with ease, the small careful gestures that made her presence so magnetic. As he approached, she looked up and smiled, handing him a small piece of freshly baked bread. He accepted it with a quiet nod, feeling a connection that had always been there, though it had grown stronger since the reconciliation with his brother. The day was long, and as the sun moved across the sky, Ease noticed other instances where anger had quietly festered in the village. A young boy scolded his friend for knocking over a basket of tomatoes, a woman snapped at her husband for forgetting to carry water, and a merchant argued with a customer over the price of yams. In each moment, Ease felt a pull, a desire to intervene, to show that calm could change the outcome, that small acts of patience could ripple into something much larger than the individual moments themselves. He stepped in, gently, subtly, helping to mediate disputes without taking sides, always letting the villagers find their own understanding guided by his example. By mid-afternoon, the river shimmered in the heat, and Ease sat on the bank, dipping his hands into the cool water, letting it run through his fingers. He thought about his father again, about the stories of men who had let anger rule them and the destruction it had left behind. He realized that the choice he had made yesterday was only the beginning. Every day would bring tests, moments where anger would rise like a storm, but now he had a blueprint, a path to walk where peace was the anchor, no matter how tempting it might be to let his fists or his words lash out. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the village, Ease noticed Chijibem walking toward him. His brother carried a small bundle of freshly harvested cocoyams, and without a word, offered them to Ease. The gesture was simple, but it spoke volumes, a quiet acknowledgement of yesterday's reconciliation and a desire to move forward together. Ease accepted, feeling a surge of emotion that was both tender and fierce. The anger that could have consumed them both had been replaced by something far stronger. Trust built on deliberate choice, on the patience to see beyond pride. That evening, the brothers returned home together, their conversation light, touching on memories of childhood games and dreams they had once shared. Their mother watched from the doorway, her eyes misty, understanding that what had been healed was more than just a misunderstanding. It was a bond reforged, a lesson in resilience that would carry them through the rest of their lives. As night fell, Ease lay under the sky, stars scattered across the darkening canvas, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. He understood now that peace was not passive. It required courage, awareness, and a willingness to act with integrity even when the easier path was to succumb to rage. He thought about the village, about the people he had quietly influenced throughout the day, and realized that his choice was already creating ripples, small waves of calm moving through a world that often teetered on the edge of discord. And somewhere in the distance, the river continued to flow, carrying the whispers of his decision, as if the land itself was echoing the truth he had embraced. Anger could come, it could challenge, it could tempt, but peace, chosen deliberately, could change everything. The dawn arrived gently over Umudike, the sky brushed with soft hues of pink and gold, and the village stirred into life with quiet energy. Ease rose early, feeling the weight of yesterday's choices still settled warmly in his chest. The peace he had embraced was no longer a fragile thing, it was a living presence, like a steady heartbeat beneath the surface of everything he did. Today, he knew, would test him in ways that were more subtle, yet far more powerful than the anger he had faced before. He walked toward the fields outside the village, where farmers had already begun tending their yams and cassava. The morning air carried the smell of wet earth and freshly turned soil, mingled with the distant smoke of cooking fires. Ease noticed Ikenna, a young man from the neighboring village, arguing with one of the elder farmers about a small boundary dispute. Voices were raised, hands gestured sharply, tension hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Ease approached, keeping his steps slow and deliberate, letting his presence settle like a calm wind over troubled waters. Instead of scolding or taking sides, he spoke quietly, asking questions and listening. He helped them see the situation from each other's perspective, guiding the conversation with patience. Ikenna's face softened, the elder's brows relaxed, and slowly the argument dissolved into shared laughter and a sense of understanding. Ease felt a deep satisfaction, not from controlling the outcome, but from witnessing how a single choice to stay calm could untangle even the most stubborn knots of tension. After the fields, Ease made his way back toward the village center, where he found Adiz carrying a heavy bundle of firewood. She struggled under its weight, and Ease stepped forward without hesitation, lifting part of the bundle onto his shoulder. They walked together, side by side, their conversation flowing easily. She spoke of her dreams to open a small school in the village, to teach children not only reading and writing but also how to live with kindness and understanding. Ease listened, inspired by her vision, realizing that peace was not just about quieting anger. It was about creating the space for hope, for growth, for love to flourish even in a world that often seemed impatient and harsh. By mid-morning, a commotion drew Ease's attention near the river. A small group of villagers had gathered around a young boy who had fallen into the shallow water while chasing a dog. The child was crying, terrified, and the villagers were shouting in panic. Ease moved quickly, wading into the river with calm assurance, lifting the boy gently from the water. He handed him to his mother, who clutched her son tightly, tears streaming down her face. Ease didn't speak much, he didn't need to. The quiet strength in his actions spoke louder than any words could. The villagers looked on, their expressions a mixture of relief and admiration, recognizing that courage could be calm, that strength could be gentle. The rest of the day unfolded like a series of small miracles, each one a test of patience and self-restraint. Ease mediated disputes between neighbors over water and grazing lands, helped mend broken tools and baskets, and even stopped a small scuffle between two boys who had argued over a game of marbles. In each situation, he chose understanding over judgment, listening over shouting, and by the time the sun hung high in the afternoon sky, the village seemed lighter, as if the air itself had grown softer under the weight of his quiet presence. As the evening approached, Ease and Chijibem walked along the path toward the outer fields, carrying water for the animals. The conversation between them was gentle, filled with reflections on the past, shared hopes for the future, and laughter at old memories that had once seemed trivial but now felt precious. They spoke of the importance of family, of the way anger could corrode bonds if left unchecked, and of the power that lay in choosing restraint. Chijibem admitted that he had often let pride guide him instead of wisdom, and Ease responded with compassion, knowing that the strength of their bond was built on shared understanding rather than fear or dominance. Night settled over Umudike with a calm hush, the stars emerging slowly, twinkling like scattered jewels in the deepening sky. The villagers gathered near the central fire, sharing stories of the day, and Ys listened, heart full, as the warmth of community wrapped around him. Even the smallest moments, the laughter of children, the gentle conversation between neighbors, the shared meals, felt amplified by the choices he had made to embrace peace. Later, alone under the canopy of stars, Ys thought of the river and the soft murmuring of the water against the bank. He realized that peace was not an event or a one-time decision. It was a continuous journey, a deliberate choice made with each action, each word, each thought. The anger that could have ruled his life was not gone, but he had learned to meet it with patience, to guide it into understanding rather than destruction. He closed his eyes, feeling the quiet hum of the village around him. He imagined the future, a village where children learned not only the skills to survive but also the wisdom to live well, where disagreements could be resolved with dialogue instead of shouts, where hearts could heal instead of breaking. And he understood, deeply, that his choice to embrace peace had not only changed him but had begun to ripple outward, shaping the lives of everyone around him. In the stillness of that night, Ys whispered a promise to himself and to the world. Anger might visit again, it might tempt and roar, but he would meet it with calm, he would choose understanding, and he would keep building bridges instead of burning them. The river would continue to flow, carrying the echoes of his choice, and the village of Umudike would move forward, stronger, gentler, and bound together by the power of deliberate peace. And somewhere in the quiet, beneath the stars, Ys smiled, knowing that one man's choice, made with courage and care, could indeed change everything. The morning in Umudike came with a gentle warmth, sunlight spilling over the red earth in golden rivers, and Ys woke before the village had fully stirred. The air was crisp with the faint scent of dew and smoke from early fires, and he felt the pulse of life in the village, steady and patient, like the quiet rhythm that had begun to settle in his own heart. He rose, dressing quickly, and stepped outside to breathe in the calm, noticing that even the birds seemed to sing with purpose today, their chirps weaving a subtle harmony across the sky. Ys decided to visit the neighboring villages, carrying small gifts of yams and cassava, not as a gesture of superiority or wealth, but as an extension of the peace he had begun to cultivate in Umudike. He knew that influence traveled quietly, like water seeping into the roots of a tree, and that the act of reaching out could prevent the misunderstandings and resentments that often sparked conflicts between communities. He walked steadily, feeling the weight of each step grounded in intention, aware that his choices today could echo long after the sun had set. As he entered Okwudili, the first village along the path, he noticed a heated argument at the center. A young woman was demanding payment for work she had done, and the man she had served refused, raising his voice, threatening her. The villagers circled, murmuring anxiously, unsure whether to intervene. Ys did not hesitate. He approached slowly, calm and measured, greeting both parties warmly before listening attentively to their sides. His presence alone seemed to soften the tension, like a gentle wind passing over a restless lake. By the time he had spoken, suggesting a fair solution that honored both the woman's labor and the man's capacity to pay, the argument had dissolved, replaced by nods of understanding and subtle smiles of relief. The young woman, Neka, lingered near Ys as he prepared to leave, her eyes curious and cautious. She asked why he cared so much about settling disputes that were not his own, and Ys smiled softly, telling her simply that peace was a choice that belonged to everyone, and that helping others see it could prevent sorrow from spreading like fire through dry grass. Neka listened, thoughtful, and for the first time, Ys felt a sense of satisfaction deeper than pride, a sense that he was planting seeds whose fruits would one day nourish more than just his own family. As he continued toward the next village, the sun climbed higher, painting the sky with shades of yellow and orange, and Ys' path took him along a narrow trail lined with cashew trees and the distant hum of cicadas. A child tripped on the path, scraping her knees, and before she could cry out, Ys knelt beside her, brushing the dust from her skin. He spoke softly, comforting her, showing that care could arrive without scolding, that attention could heal without judgment. Her mother appeared moments later, gratitude shining in her eyes, and Ys felt again the quiet power of gentle action. the ability to turn moments of fear or anger into moments of reassurance and connection. By late afternoon, Ys reached the outskirts of Amusi, where a small festival had begun. It was a celebration of harvest, with drums echoing through the fields, children running in games, and women carrying trays of food for neighbors. Yet, even in such joy, conflict lurked quietly. Two men argued over a misplaced basket of grain, voices sharp, hands gesturing as if to strike. Ys moved between them with calm authority, asking them to pause, to breathe, to consider the long friendship they had shared and the years of trust between their families. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, their shoulders relaxed, their voices softened, and when they shook hands, the villagers murmured in approval, sensing that peace had been restored not by force, but by intention and patience. As the festival continued, Ys found himself at the center of the celebration, yet he did not seek attention. Children ran to him, curious, while elders nodded respectfully, recognizing a rare presence that carried neither arrogance nor demand, only clarity and calm. Ys arrived with a basket of roasted plantains, joining him in a quiet corner, away from the noise, and together they watched the dances, listened to the drummers, and shared stories of childhood mischief, of lessons learned too late, of hopes for the future. She spoke of how anger had once dominated her own household, how disputes had left scars between siblings, and Ys listened, knowing that every shared story of struggle and triumph was part of a larger tapestry, one woven with patience, understanding, and deliberate choice. As evening approached, the festival slowed, lanterns casting warm pools of light across the dirt paths. Ys and Chijubem returned to Umudike, carrying baskets of food and small trinkets collected along the way, but more importantly, carrying a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had reinforced what Ys already knew. Peace was not passive. It demanded courage, patience, and action. It required noticing moments that could ignite discord and choosing instead to plant understanding. Every child soothed, every argument mediated, every hand extended with sincerity was a thread that strengthened the bonds of community. Back in Umudike, the night settled in with a comforting stillness. Villagers gathered near the riverbank, sharing quiet conversations, laughter weaving through the gentle hum of crickets. Ys sat with Ys and Chijubem, looking at the reflections of lanterns on the water, thinking of how far they had come since the anger had first threatened to consume their family. The choice to remain calm had spread outward, shaping not only their lives but the lives of those around them. Under the vast sky, filled with stars that glimmered like distant promises, Ys understood the depth of the lesson he had embraced. Anger would visit again, in small ways and large, and he would not always know how it would appear. Yet the river within him, the river of patience, clarity, and deliberate kindness, would carry him through. The village would continue to grow, nourished not only by the soil and the water, but by the quiet courage of one man who had chosen peace over rage, understanding over pride, and connection over division. As the night deepened, Ys walked alone along the river, feeling the cool current against his feet. The world seemed alive in ways he had never noticed before, the way the water whispered, the way the trees swayed with unspoken rhythm, the way the wind carried the soft laughter of children from distant homes. He realized that peace was not an endpoint but a living force, a constant presence that required attention, courage, and heart. The village slept around him, cradled in the calm he had helped cultivate, and he felt a quiet pride, not for himself alone, but for the life that now flowed more freely because of choices made with care. Ys finally returned home, laying down on the cool mat in his room. His eyes drifted closed, but sleep did not come immediately. He thought of tomorrow, of the countless moments where anger or misunderstanding could arise, and he promised himself that he would meet each one with the same calm, the same wisdom, the same gentle power that had transformed yesterday into hope. The night embraced him, carrying whispers of the river, the murmur of the earth, and the steady heartbeat of a village learning slowly, quietly, to live with understanding and grace. And in that quiet night, Ys smiled, knowing that peace, once chosen, had the power to shape not only a single life, but the rhythm of an entire community, echoing across the fields, the river, and the hearts of those willing to listen. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Umudike. witnessing how one man's choice of peace over anger changed everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more captivating folktales and tales that stir your emotions. We would love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments the country you're watching from and what time it is there. Your stories and moments make this community special, and we can't wait to share the next adventure with you.